Hello. We chose to focus on the Poverty and Race Research Action Council's article on the nexus between school funding, school segregation, and housing. So basically that is what those three things have to do with each other. There are lots of negative educational impacts that come from those three factors being separated. There are lower student achievement results, especially for the students that are considered non-mainstream. So that will be students that are races other than white and in socioeconomic classes other than middle class, so lower than that. There are higher dropout rates for those students. It's harder for them to have competitive college applications. Their teachers are less qualified and there's higher rates of turnover, so they're staying for shorter periods of time, which means that they're not building those relationships with those students and they're not learning the area and making as big of an impact as they could if they would stay for longer. There's a less challenging curriculum in these high poverty, high minority schools, and there's less access to advanced placement or gifted programs for those students. And those students are also suspended and expelled at higher rates than their white classmates.
So like Elena was saying, the first graphic in the top left-hand corner shows the percentage of students who are high poverty or high minority. So they make up 12% of the student population across all schools in the United States. Yet if you look at the graphic in the bottom right-hand corner, it shows the percentage of students that are suspended, and high minority and high poverty students make up 22% of students who are suspended. So even though they only make up 12% of the student body population, they are suspended at a 22% rate. So it shows that although there are already all these negative impacts in their schools, less challenging classes, less qualified teachers, in addition, they're also treated very differently from, their white classmates. So they already have these negative impacts of poor quality instruction, and they're more likely to be suspended and drop out.
There's also disproportionate representation of non-mainstream students in these schools. So 30% of students attending high poverty schools are Black, and 48% of these students are Latinx. And many of these students are also faced with double segregation, which means that they are segregated by race and also by socioeconomic status. So it's like we were saying, the students that are not white and then also lower than middle class are being put into these schools at a much higher rate than other students, which has lots of negative impacts on them, as Rachel was just talking about. The benefits of school integration are clear. There was a study done on low-income students in low poverty schools versus low-income students in high poverty schools, and it shows that the ones in low poverty schools show much more growth over time. So when they're in those schools that aren't affected by the same poverty as they are, then they have more opportunities for growth. They do better than their classmates in the same socioeconomic status as them, but at a school that is higher poverty. Desegregation of schools is also linked to closing the achievement gap between white and Black students. The time in the United States history that had the most gains in closing that achievement gap was the same time that had the most gains in school desegregation in the 70s or the 80s. And then this trend reversed when the Supreme Court dismantled desegregation in the 1990s. There are lots of long-term benefits of diverse schools as well, not just educational benefits. And those things can be, again, achievement gains, especially for those low-income students, reductions in racial prejudice and fear, increases in cross-racial trust and friendships, and enhanced capacity for multicultural interactions. So if multicultural integration becomes the norm for all students, it will continue to feel natural and comfortable throughout their lives, which will lead to a more inclusive society outside of schools.
This graphic shows the increased percentage of non-white students who are being enrolled in schools. So in 1988, the enrollment of non-white students was at 5.7% across all schools. And in 2013, that increased to 18.6% of students enrolled. So after looking at this drastic increase of students of color who are being enrolled in our schools, Elena and I asked ourselves, why is that not being reflected in our schools? Why do we still have student segregation when they're being enrolled quicker? And we do have laws protecting them from this segregation. So we did some research on the redlining map in Baltimore and how that has led to school segregation in our city. So in 1937, the Federal Homeowners Loan Corporation created this map outlining what they considered to be the safer or better neighborhoods in Baltimore. So you'll see on the outskirts there, the coded blue and green neighborhoods, that's what they considered to be safer. And as you get closer to the city, there's the yellow and red areas. So what happens in those red neighborhoods when they're deemed not safe, not as nice to live in, there's a low percentage of home ownership, there's poor maintenance of infrastructure, the people who live there are more likely to have an unstable income. And even if families in those neighborhoods do want to move out or purchase a home, mortgage lenders refuse to make loans to them. And, you know, when you talk to people today, when they go to buy a house, they buy a house in a neighborhood where they would send their children to school. Where you live directly correlates to what school your children would go to. And when you look at the government housing and education agencies, and even you know, on our district level, they're constantly in two different agencies when really they need to be integrated. And, you know, this cycle of poverty will continue to cycle through if these students in these red neighborhoods, their parents cannot get out of these neighborhoods with poor school districts. They have no wealth to pass down to their family if they don't own their home. And so students who live in those red neighborhoods are stuck there because they have no resources educationally or financially to get out. Their children will be sent to school there as well if that's where they continue to live. Thank you.